Alright fellas, welcome back for more SBC gaming news. Today we have a lot of new consoles being released. We also have some interesting and exciting developments on the software front for a lot of these devices. And lastly, we have some pretty neat user creations. As always, I'll have everything timestamped below so you can skip around. I'll also link all the resources I use so you can see for yourself. We'll start with new hardware first, followed by buyer advice, and then we'll have bugs, fixes, and updates, and then user creations. Alright, why don't we get into it? So this is really cool. I made a video on it already covering it. I also made a guide, so if you need help, you can check out my blog or my YouTube channel. But yeah, user Snowwolf compiled the Sonic Mania decompilation for the Miyoo Mini and the Miyoo Mini Plus. And thanks to the Onion OS team, we can now play Sonic Mania on your handheld. It's pretty good. I tested it out myself. It seems to run pretty smooth. The only downside that I saw, at least for my handheld, was that the battery drained a lot faster, it seemed like, while playing Sonic Mania. Now, I'm not a big Sonic fan because growing up, I only had a Nintendo, an NES, and we were pretty broke, so we didn't get a lot of games. So I didn't get to experience the Sega systems until the Dreamcast when I bought one when it was clearance for 50 bucks at Toys R Us. I still remember it. I'd walk in and there's a whole pile of just Dreamcast sitting there in front of the register, and I was like, it's like, can I get one? Can I get one? So if you take a look down here, we'll see the instructions to download and get Sonic Mania running. Essentially, you need to have bought Sonic Mania somewhere. It was free on Epic Game Store, and if you have it on Steam, you need to get the data.rsdk file and then copy it over and it'll work. Obviously, you can pirate it if you want, but you know, if you can get it for free legally, why not, right? So Epic Game Store is a great source. I know the store is a lot worse than Steam, and a lot of people seem to hate Epic, but like, I don't get the hate because people use it to play Fortnite anyways. I see y'all playing Fortnite. Not you exactly, listener, but I see people complain about, I don't want to get Epic Game Store for free games, and then I see them spending like, I don't know, crazy amount of money on Fortnite skins, and I was like, bro, what are you doing? You do know that they're the same company. Anyways, yeah, I use my Epic Game installation and I copy the file over. It's pretty simple. The whole process is pretty simple, but you do need Onion OS for your Miyoo Mini or Miyoo Mini Plus. So for the aspect ratio, it's widescreen normally, but you have two options to get it to 4:3. You can either stretch it to full screen by pressing select and R1, and that's not ideal. It doesn't look the best. Or you can crop it to 4:3, but then you're going to lose a little bit of detail on the sides, especially in the menu. And that's not ideal as well, but it's completely playable and you can beat the game like that. And that is done by editing the settings.ini file. And there are just 3 lines that you have to edit. So usermon has the settings you need to edit. Win width, max pix width to 352. And you add this line on the very bottom. And then I tried it out, it works pretty well, it looks pretty good. 352 was the setting recommended by user Snowwolf, which hits the sweet spot of looking like 4:3 without breaking anything. See, there's a lot of other ports too. I don't think it's a feature that's talked about a lot. I do see a few posts with the Wolfenstein or Doom ports playing on the Miyoo Mini, but there's cave stories there too. There's a lot, so I recommend checking it out. Alright, moving on to new consoles now. We have this post by Cake is Great in the SBC Gaming subreddit. We have the Sipeed FPGA tiny micro handheld console, and that is coming from liliputing. Let's give credit to the person who wrote the article as well. Is it just one guy at liliputing? Because I see the same guy on the articles. Yeah, it's Brad Linder who wrote the article. Okay, so this is an FPGA, and I saw a YouTube channel a while back. I think I referred back to it in one of my SBC Gaming news segments. But it's a very cheap FPGA that you can use, and you can emulate up to Super Nintendo the last time I heard, which was I think a couple months ago. So it might have improved, but yeah. I do like the design of it. I like the idea of a small handheld. It doesn't have to be FPGA. People think that FPGA means perfect emulation. It's not. It's still emulation. You're emulating the hardware, and you could have flaws in the emulation. You know, it's not as accurate as the original hardware. Nothing will ever be as accurate as the original hardware. But yeah, this is pretty cool. I really like the idea of a small form factor. Now, if this is cheap, that's cool. If it's not, then I don't see why I would pick this over the Miyoo A30 or the newly announced Anbernic RG28XX, because those devices will be able to play more games or more systems, probably more reliably. So I like the idea of it. There's really no details. It's gonna be really small. It's gonna be about 2 inches for the screen. And yeah, I don't know, man. It's interesting though. I hope it's priced a little bit lower, because then that would be pretty cool to have an FPGA based handheld that fits in the palm of your hand. The reason why I like the idea of these micro handhelds is that the Game Boy Micro was one of my favorite handhelds of all time. And even though the screen is super tiny, it was very sharp. And you're not playing it for more than 10 minutes at a time. It was meant for like, you keep it in your pocket, you pull it out, play for a little bit, and then put it back. Because the console that is the best is the one that you have with you. So if you have nothing, then, you know, it doesn't matter how good it is. You can't play any games on it. But a micro handheld, you can carry with you, especially if it's rugged. Something you can kind of toss around and it won't get broken immediately, right? Yeah, I really like this comment though, because I can't unsee it now. This was from Rebel Art Warrior, and they said they're gonna get one just so I can make it say, oops, I peed, and I cannot unsee that now. Every time I see that logo, I only see I peed. Oh man. Okay, this post comes from Barker88 in the SBC Gaming subreddit, and this is the new Powkiddy device with a 1:1 aspect ratio screen. It's going to be the RGB20SX, and this video comes from the YouTube channel Javi Play Retro, and I believe it's just taking a clip from a manufacturer video. But we're going to take a look, and it actually looks pretty cool. So this is the vertical counterpart to the RGB30. I'm not exactly sure if this is going to be an improvement, because I think the RGB30 has a decent form factor to begin with. So I'm not really entirely sure if this will appeal to people who already have the RGB30. I'm personally a fan of vertical form factors because it reminds me of the Game Boy Color, and that was one of my, earliest devices growing up. So I have a lot of nostalgia for it, but a lot of people don't, and I can see why, because except for the 405V, which is really chunky, they're not really comfortable to hold anymore. They're made for children. So tiny hands, and I have smaller hands, but like, even for me, it's not the most comfortable holding a vertical form factor device. It's more the nostalgia talking. That's pretty cool though. I hope the price is a little bit on the cheaper side, but probably going to be priced around the same price as the RGB30. Now we have more video footage of the Miyoo A30. This was posted by CV990 on the Miyoo Mini subreddit. And yeah, every time I look at it, I'm like, oh, it looks so good except for the analog stick. The reason why I think this is okay is that it's more recessed. So when you're playing it, your thumb shouldn't accidentally hit that analog stick. Now that looks very uncomfortable to use because you're going to be holding it like this. And then it's not going to be very ergonomic to use that. And I have experience with controls being placed on the lower side. It's not comfortable. So, I might have mentioned this, but here, this D-pad on the M17, super uncomfortable to use. I'd rather use the analog stick, even if it's worse, because of how uncomfortable it is to grip something at the low end here. And this one has enough space for your fingers to rest on the back. That one won't. So that's going to be extra uncomfortable. So in my opinion, it would have been nice to have no analog stick so I can just hold it a little bit more comfortably. But I'll give it a pass because it's a little bit more recessed, so you shouldn't be hitting it all the time. So yeah, this is a nice design. I really love the Game Boy Micro. I wish I didn't sell mine. I had the Famicom edition. And yeah, I kind of wish I didn't sell it. Oh well, times were rough, so it is what it is. Alright, so this is pretty interesting. Anbernic released news for the RG28XX. So if you want to know their naming convention, this is the screen size, and then this refers to the generation or the chipset. And it looks very confusing because it's a bunch of numbers and letters, but once you get used to it, you realize that, hey, there's a lot of sense in the naming scheme. So this is their follow-up to Miyoo's A30. They seem to be copying what Miyoo's doing, and it's very interesting because if their flip version comes out earlier and it doesn't have analog sticks, then it may end up being better. So this one doesn't have analog sticks. I think this one, for me, is designed a lot better for a couple of reasons. It looks a little bit worse. This one just looks a lot cleaner. It's like uniform and symmetrical and sharp. This one looks a little bit more chunky, but guess what? I think this will actually be more comfortable to hold because it looks a little bit more bulky and more rounded. And one really good design they did was the speaker grill here is slanted downwards. And the reason why that's good is when you're playing a tiny device, your hands will get tired if you're playing for, a while, and then you'll want to rest your thumb. And I do this with my Miyoo Mini Plus occasionally, even though, I've gotten used to it. Sometimes you'll rest your thumb over the speaker grill and it'll muffle the sound coming out of it, and you'll immediately lift your thumb again. So that device, because it's angled downwards, when you rest your thumb on it, it won't block the entire grill, so it wouldn't be as muffled. I think that's really smart. I don't know if that was done intentionally, but there's no analog stick here too, so you can have a more comfortable grip of the D-pad. And yeah, I think this is really cool. I think this is also worth considering getting if it's going to be priced affordably. And I'm not entirely sure about the pricing scheme because I think it's going to have the same chipset as the 35XXH and the Plus and the 2024 version. And, I think it's going to have lower battery life, obviously. And I hope it's priced lower. I don't know. I just have a soft spot for cheap handhelds that work pretty well. A lot of people can't afford the more nicer, expensive ones. And so, I think having this hobby be accessible to everybody is kind of neat because, growing up with a handheld device, it makes a lot of memories, playing Pokemon Red back in the day. When you're broke, you can only buy like one game, maybe 2 games a year, and those are the games you have. So I think it'd be pretty cool if we could have affordable devices. Okay, so we got this news item from Wodo, and it is the ZPG A1 Unicorn. And yeah, I've been looking forward to details about this device. It runs a Helio G99, which is a really powerful chipset. And supposedly it can play a few PS2 games, but we'll see. The reason why I'm excited is this just looks like a better RGB30. I don't know about the build quality, but it seems to be a little bit more well built than the RGB30. The controls seem to be a lot better, and then we have front-facing speaker grills, which is automatically going to be better than what the RGB30 has. It looks a little bit more rounded, so it should be more comfortable to hold. And yeah, this comes from liliputing as well, and it's the same guy, Brad Linder, wrote the article. And something interesting happened here. So I saw the listing pop up about a few months ago. It was roughly $2 something. And there was another listing that popped up for about $220. Apparently, it's not the official listing. I'm not entirely sure if that's true. It might have been the company testing out the reception to the pricing. But $220 is way too high. You're looking at the Retro Pocket 4, which is going to blow this out of the water. And you're looking at the Anbernic RG28XX, which is also going to blow this out of the water because it has a big, beautiful OLED screen. And so that's way too high, Like, why would I pay for an inferior device in almost every way other than having a 1-to-1 aspect screen ratio? And so, in my estimation, I think they're probably going to go for like 150. But even then, I'm just like, that's getting a little too high, It's getting a little bit too high. The original price rumor I saw was for like $110. Now that would be sweet. If you can get this for $110, I think that's fantastic. But I don't think they're gonna price it like that. I'm not entirely sure. I just really like the look of this. Some people might want the D-pad on top. Personally, I don't care because I feel like this is enough space where you can grip both pretty comfortably. It looks like this is in the middle, so it won't be too bad to use that D-pad. And apparently this was based off of a hand-built in small batches version because I saw a similar design that someone bought on their YouTube channel. And I think this is the mass-produced version of that. So now we're moving on to buyer advice. This was posted by Real Techno Music in the SBC Gaming subreddit. And this is referring to some posts by Andy Nguyen. And he's mentioning how PPSSPP is now running natively on the PSP portal. They reported the vulnerabilities, and then people were upset, I think. So I think there's some drama there. But for me, the big takeaway is that exploits on the PS portal is going to come out soon, and you can hack that to run emulators natively. Now, this comment confused me, but a commenter in a thread cleared it up for me. I'm not sure if it's true or not, but I think it makes sense what they said. So he was saying, y'all don't realize that all the recent PS4, PS5 jailbreaks are only possible because I reported vulnerabilities. And I was like, how does that make sense? Like, I was confused. I was genuinely confused because I was like, how do you report vulnerabilities to Sony and then that makes the exploits available? Because wouldn't they just fix it? And then someone mentioned it below where how it works is these really talented, smart people, and I think this is the guy that did most of the Sony exploits, the Flow. Someone mentioned below how they would literally wait for him to, get off of school to release some exploits for the older PlayStation systems. I think the PSP or something. So he must be pretty big in the custom firmware or, finding security exploit scenes. Anyways, but these companies will pay huge bounties to fix any problems or exploits. And what they do is they will report it, but they'll report it a little bit late. And so people in the know, what you're supposed to do is keep your consoles offline. And then when they patch it, you're offline so you don't get the patch. And then you can use whatever exploit they release. And that's the kind of balance, I guess, in terms of like the corporation paying talented people to fix the exploits. And then people who want to use the exploits just waiting for it to come out. For me, it's neat, but it's not something like I need to do because obviously this is just being used for piracy and piracy on like current systems for current games. Anyways, I think that's pretty neat. I'm not sure if this is worth getting just for the possibility of hacking because you can get, like a Logitech G Cloud, an Odin 2, our Retro Pocket 4, any of those systems, higher end systems will be around a similar price and do things probably a lot better. So that's interesting. But yeah, I also had a PSP. I wish I didn't get rid of that. Oh well. Okay, now we're getting into bugs, fixes, and updates. And here we have a post by Tokyo Weirdo in the SBC Gaming subreddit. The Trimui Smart Pro firmware 1.0.4 now has Vulkan support. So this is really cool in that we should theoretically get better emulator performance for some emulators. Now, according to the post I read, we haven't seen a huge leap in performance yet, but it also hasn't been more than a week. So I think if you wait it out, it's not easy for someone in their free time, because, they're not getting paid to do this, to figure out, something very difficult and then make things work smoothly. It's very difficult to do. If you don't believe me, try it out yourself, fellas. Highly recommend trying to dive into even modifying one small thing. You'll see how much of a headache it is and how time consuming it is. It's like you have to be really, really adamant about, getting something working, and as well as being very smart. So yeah, it's exciting because I think the Trimui Smart Pro is quickly becoming one of the best handhelds you can buy for under $60. The normal price is around $60. It was on sale for $41 during the AliExpress anniversary sale in March. That's crazy low. $41 for that handheld is super good. I think at that price, the Trimui Smart Pro is probably the best console you can get. I can't think of anything else other than maybe the RG35XXHs that were sold for like $27 on TikTok Shop. There's no way you're gonna get a cheaper handheld that's that solidly built for that price. But yeah, there's a custom tweak to the firmware called Tomato OS. It's not its own operating system, technically speaking, but the guy made a lot of tweaks and added more emulators and a lot of functionality that wasn't included. So I think a lot of people are running Tomato OS on their Trimui Smart Pros. So if you have one and you're like, I would like to check the new stuff out, you can check that out. Speaking of the Trimui Smart Pro, we have this post from Ganimoth in the SBC Gaming subreddit. Portmaster is also coming to the Trimui Smart Pro, so that's pretty awesome. If you don't know, Portmaster lets you run ported PC games, and there's a lot that run on Portmaster now. So you can play Stardew Valley, you can play Balatro. There's a lot of games that you can play depending on the power of your handheld. But yeah, I think that's pretty awesome. It's fascinating to me how back in my day, I remember my dad's, I think he bought a PC from a dude. I think he got ripped off, but I think he spent like $1,000 on it. It was running Windows 98, and I think it had less than a gigabyte of RAM. Yeah, and then, you know, mostly he used it for work, but we played a few games on it, like StarCraft. So like that was $1,000 device, and now phones are more powerful than computers we had back then, and these cheaper handhelds can run the same games that that wouldn't run on my PC back then. So that's just mind-boggling to me how quickly technology has advanced and miniaturized. Going along like the software and firmware updates, we have this post from Breakslow in the SBC Gaming subreddit. It's referring to a Ko-fi post by Acme Plus. I believe Acme Plus is one of the developers for the custom firmwares for the RG35XX. And this is the post here, and we can take away a couple things, and this is pretty big news, at least to me. If you've been using Batocera on the RG35XX, you know that it's not perfect, so things don't work well, there's some features missing. According to this post, soon we'll have mainline Batocera on those devices, on the RG35XX, the Plus, and the 2024 version. If you have the OG RG535XX, which was available for like £12 on the TikTok shop, that won't be included in this. It has to have the H700 chip. So those three devices should get this support. And what that means is we'll get all the features of Batocera, and we'll also get 64-bit support, which theoretically means more emulator support and better emulator performance, and it will also have GPU access. So they're still working on it. And this is crazy, but the way they got 64-bit support was this guy named Silicon XArc found the necessary pieces in automotive firmware. So apparently the chipset was being used in cars somewhere, I don't know where, and then they found the software necessary to get 64-bit support included. And it's crazy because, you know, these companies over in China, they're kind of notorious for just stealing IP, you know, everywhere. It doesn't matter who it's from, they'll just take it and then cobble it together and make a device. And that's why that scene, it goes really fast in terms of development, because it's just a Wild West. They have no respect for copyright law, and they just take whatever they want, right? And then they obfuscate what they did because they don't want other people stealing what they did and get ahead of them, or they don't want to be found out for stealing stuff. So they try to hide that, and so this frustrates people who make custom firmware or custom operating systems because they have zero access to the device in terms of the hardware and the software. And so it's very hard to make something. So I respect all these people because it's very time consuming figuring this stuff out. Sometimes they have to write it from scratch or reverse engineer things instead of developing the actual firmware or the custom operating system. So a lot of respect to those guys, and it looks like they made a large breakthrough in terms of making Batocera run a lot better on the Plus, the H, and the 2024. So it was supposed to come out a few days after this post, but it hasn't yet, and I'm thinking that they ran into a lot of bugs. There's probably a lot of issues to work through, so hopefully they take their time. If you want to get updated, you can go to this Ko-fi page, and then it'll give you a link to the latest release. So if you want to stay up to date, just have this page bookmarked, and you'll know when the latest release comes out, and you can try it right away. I'm pretty excited to see what it's like, and I know I'm in the minority, but I really like the stock operating system for the H. It plays games very well, and it's all I needed to do. The only thing I would like is the option to have more save states just for making reviews of games. When I play games normally, I don't use save states. I normally don't fast forward or anything. I just play it as it is. The lack of save states though make it pretty difficult to get the sections that you want when you want to go to that place and record video footage for the review of the game. And occasionally I make reviews for games. I want to grab footage from a boss fight that I thought was cool, or a cutscene that I thought was really funny. And it's really hard when you only have like 4 or 5 save states. So what I've been doing is I've been copying them over and renaming them, and then I can copy back that save state if I want. But yeah, I really like the H. I think it's solid. I beat Aria of Sorrow on it. It wasn't the good ending, so I'm gonna go back and 100% the game. And yeah, it took about 6 hours to play the first time, and then probably like an hour or 2 more to get everything and figure everything out. So if you're looking for a game that's kind of on the short side, Castlevania Aria of Sorrow is pretty fun. There's only a few frustrating places. My god, the Medusa heads flying around in that one place with the conveyor belts and the spikes. Never again, dude. I have to use potions to get through that part. Now we have this post by McFluffBoy, and I think this is all big news for a lot of the people who have the Powkiddy devices and certain handhelds, Anbernic devices. Essentially, JELOS stopped support for a lot of the chipsets that were getting a little bit outdated. And so what they did was they released one new update, and that was it. There's no more. So that was the last release. And the problem is, with that new update, new bugs were introduced, but there's no longer going to be any fixes. So then a group has picked it up, and they're replacing it with a operating system called ROCKNIX, which is supposed to be a continuation of JELOS. It's a pretty big difference in that they're going to update the kernel and everything, and it should be more stable, but I would say wait a little bit more, because I've seen a lot of posts where people tried ROCKNIX and then their handheld had some problems shutting down or restarting, or the battery draining really quickly, which is a little bit weird because I feel like when you turn the console off, it shouldn't be drawing any power, but for some reason these systems do. And so what people had to do was revert back to JELOS, and then they had to take the battery out and then plug it back in and then restart the device for it to function normally again. So with that issue being prevalent among a lot of posters, I would probably say hold off on ROCKNIX for a little bit until it's a bit more stable, and then you can check it out. And this post is a little bit outdated. It's about 2 weeks ago, and a more recent post that there's support coming for the X55. So that's a popular handheld. You'll be getting a custom operating system for that as well, so don't worry about that. Okay, moving on to user creations now. We have this post by Adventurous Candy. This guy has been making a lot of custom buttons, and they all look pretty good. He's doing a lot of custom die jobs and painting shells too. This one just looks really nice. It's the combination of the backlighting combined with the semi-translucent buttons that look like candy. It looks pretty darn good here. So if you want to look at how to make your own buttons, this guy takes the, I forget what it's called, Oyumaru clay, I think. Essentially, you heat it up in hot water, and then you can make a mold for your buttons. So you just cast the buttons, and then you use the resin in the molds that you just made, and then you can make the buttons. It doesn't seem like it's an easy process, you know, but this guy outlines everything. So if you're interested in that, you can make your own buttons at home if you don't have a 3D printer. I think it's way more accessible. The downside is you do have to put in a lot more work to get it just right. But yeah, nice job, man. This looks really good. Alright, this is something that people have been asking for actually. So Ocelot08 in the SBC gaming subreddit, probably a hero to a lot of people. This guy made analog hole plugs. And a lot of people have been asking for this because they don't like the analog stick here because they just don't use it. And I understand because it gets in the way. You know? In terms of ergonomics, you have to kind of arch your thumbs for the D-pad and the face buttons, and it's not the most comfortable. So this guy printed out custom plugs, and you can download it yourself if you have a 3D printer or access to a 3D printer. It's right here. It's just released for free. And you know, I like this one comment here where you can put googly eyes here, you can put stickers there, or you can put speakers here, so on. Yeah, user Jandrum said it. Now let's say you wanted that for the H or the Retro Pocket 2S. Guess what? This guy has you covered. So he designed plugs for that as well, and the files are down in the comments. You can print it out yourself. For me, I'm not too concerned about the H. It's okay, but yeah, I don't really use the analog sticks for most of the systems that this thing can play, so I wouldn't mind just covering it up like that. The M17 could use that. These joysticks need to go on this. I'm going to talk about that in a bit. Right, our last post now. User Dejwara on the Trimui subreddit has posted a lot of apps that this guy made for the Trimui Smart Bro. So there's a lot of apps here, so including enabling FTP, an easier way to reboot, changing your MAC address to be static. And this reminds me of my college days. So your MAC address is the hardware address or hardware identifier for your network card. And they would use that to track the bandwidth to your dorm room. So back when I was in college, we had a bandwidth limitation of 1.5 gigabytes a day, which is really not a lot, but back in those days, you only use the internet to check email, and you really didn't do much. Now, all of us, my friend group, we downloaded a lot of anime. But yeah, back then I watched a lot of anime, you know? Not anymore. I watched a little bit here and there, but I've mostly grown out of it. That said, if you guys want an anime recommendation, Delicious in Dungeon is pretty good. There's like, I don't want to spoil it, but if you watch it, halfway through something happens and it completely shifts the tone of the series. And I was like, wow, this is pretty cool, you know? Obviously, Freeman, I really like that series. And that's pretty much it. Okay, that's gonna be it, fellas. Before I go, I'll update my M17 experience real quick. I've been playing this, mostly Sudoku on this device. And yeah, I'm liking this device a lot, except for the analog sticks, and I'll go over why real quick. For starters, this analog stick sucks. It really snaps to the cardinal directions, and it feels pretty bad to use, and it doesn't work very well. I tried changing the squares in Sudoku with this thing. Unusable, you gotta use the D-pad. Secondly, the second analog stick is completely unneeded because it mirrors the face buttons. And I'm like, who wants this? Who asked for this? This should be gone because I have to hold my thumb up like this now. If I tap it, it'll actually have a consequence because it'll represent one of the face buttons, and I don't want to press that. Also, this joystick already has drifting on it, and I might just remove it completely because it is useless. That said, I really need this because since the D-pad is shifted down, you can't use this for a long time and have it be comfortable. It is very uncomfortable to use. Just when you're gripping it. Yeah, I mentioned this. I think I mentioned this before, but when you're gripping it, it's so uncomfortable. It's unnatural because you're holding it like this. There's a lot of space here. You can't palm it. You can't rest it on your fingertips. You know, it's almost the same as the Miyoo Mini Plus. But this is symmetrical, so it's way more comfortable than this. This is asymmetrical, so. But I really like this device. I've been getting roughly 3 hours and 40 minutes of playtime per charge for the PSP emulator. I'm going to test it out on lower end systems to see if it makes a difference. I've been using stock operating system on the stock micro SD card, and the stock card is fine in terms of the operating system. In terms of the reliability, it's terrible because since it's a single FAT32 partition, you know, you can run check disk on it, it'll be fine. It's just data. And it's not like a Linux partition or anything. And every time I do, there's already corruption on it. So I'm like, wow, it hasn't been more than a week and there's already corrupted data. It's unreliable. But since I've been only playing 2 games on it, so far the games haven't become corrupted. The operating system files haven't become corrupted. And the save states and the save files have not become corrupted because there's only 2 games. That said, I think it's not the, I hope it's not the reliability of the memory itself. I think it is the reliability of the microcontroller in question. I might be getting this wrong, technically speaking, but people should get the general gist of what I'm saying. But I think it's writing data to places it shouldn't be. And that is why we're seeing a lot of corrupted data. And this SD card comes very full. It only has 1 GB free. So I'm kind of speculating, what if I emptied most of the micro SD card? Wouldn't it take longer to write data to a section where you shouldn't, right? So it might increase the duration before you see something getting corrupted. But yeah, this stock card sucks. The stock card on the H is a lot better. And then the stock card on the Datafrog seems to be very weird. I saw on the Datafrog subreddit that not every microSD card works with the device. It's very picky. The only other device I saw that with was the R36S, where the device is very picky about which card it reads off of. But yeah, this one, I'm gonna try Miyoo, and I'm gonna get the Nintendo DS emulator installed. There's a pack that the user Sleepy made, so I can play DS on this, and then another user, I forgot his name, but he has a YouTube video with links to just downloading PSP for Miyoo on this device. So I'll try both of those, and then I can make my review on it. But I really like this. I would definitely have removed this, both analog sticks, just D-pad only, and then have one analog stick on the bottom for PSP games. Another thing is the rear firing speaker is really bad. The quality wise, it's sort of okay, but like it's louder than it needs to be because it's facing away from you. So whenever I turn it on, the stock operating system always reverts the volume back to the default volume for some reason. So if I forget and I'm playing a game, usually at night, it just blasts music out. I'm like, oh god, I gotta turn it down. But the headphone port seems to work pretty fine. It's on the top, which is not ideal. And yeah, I think this is a very solid, cheap device. I saw it go on sale for $27, which is pretty good. But yeah, like, I think it could be better designed. Like, we don't need these trigger buttons. We can keep the shoulder buttons, maybe make it bigger and get rid of the triggers, because I don't think the system that can run on this device well would need these, maybe except for PlayStation 1. But yeah, I wish it had either front-facing speakers. You could put one where the analog stick was. This analog stick has to go. You can flip this with the D-pad and put it down here. And then I would have either front-facing or bottom-firing speakers, because the back one is not so good. But other than that, I think it's pretty solid for the price. And the thing that I get out of testing these devices is that even with the Datafrog, like, it's just, you kind of forget the hardware and the operating system when you're playing games. Like, I don't care what operating system I have when I'm in the middle of playing a game, other than maybe using some sort of feature like switching games or, you know, save states and all that. But when I'm playing a game, it's just fun, you know? Like, I was playing Aria of Sorrow, and I was playing in 30-minute chunks before I go to sleep. It's just fun. It doesn't matter if it was stretched full screen in a 16:9 aspect ratio. It doesn't matter if I was playing on the H, you know, the Miyoo Mini Plus. It didn't matter to me. It was just a fun game. And so when I look at these devices, you know, some things may be deal breakers for other people, but for me, as long as I can play the game and it's not too uncomfortable, it's fine for me. So I really like these devices, and I understand the mentality of like people liking the device because it lets them play the games they want to play. And I get that, because I'm totally like that too, where it's just like, it doesn't matter if it's the Datafrog and it's some issues, you know, as long as I'm playing the games that I have fun with, that's all that matters. Anyways, that's gonna be it. Wow, it took longer than I did the first time. I cut down these episodes a lot, so we'll see how much fat I trim. Anyways, thank you so much for dropping by. I really do appreciate it. If you want me to cover anything, please feel free to leave a comment down below. And as always, hope you guys are staying safe and sane out there, and catch you guys next time.